Hello, good evening, and welcome to the second edition of Staying Ahead of the Curve in collaboration with the International Institute of Sports Management. I am Manu S. Jagan from the Padukone Dravid Center for Sports Excellence. This week, we will be exploring the power of preparation. As we inch closer to the end of what seems to be a trying time for the sports fraternity, athletes are itching to return to the field and to their training regimes. So through this discussion, we're hoping to ensure all our viewers are able to clear their doubts, queries, or any questions they have with regard to training and what they can look forward to in order to efficiently return to their daily rigors. So we have with us today 4 experts who are all involved with the field of preparing athletes for their particular disciplines. So firstly, I would like to introduce Ms. Akanksha Singh. She's the founder of Akanksha Singh Basketball Academy. And in the basketball fraternity, along with her 3 siblings, she is known as the Singh sisters. She's represented the Indian women's basketball team for multiple years, and she's also captained it for multiple years. So welcome, Akanksha.
Thank you, Manu.
We have with us Dr. Nikhil Latey, an expert in the field of physiotherapy, sports science. So Dr. Nikhil was also the personal physio of Mary Kom and Gagan Narang in the Olympics, and was also beside Saina Nehwal during her All England Championship. He's also the sports science consultant for Olympic Gold Quest. So welcome, Dr. Nikhil. It's a pleasure to have you here. The third person that we have here is a household name, a Bangalore-based shooter, Rakesh Manpat. He's a former national champion and the founder of Elite Shooting Academy. And he's also a recipient of the Eklavya Award. Welcome, Rakesh. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
And finally, we have Shaantanu Kulkarni, a sports psychologist who works with Samiksha Sports. He's currently pursuing his master's with the University of Staffordshire and was also a former youth player for Pune FC. Thank you for joining us, Shantanu.
Thank you, Manu.
So I'd like to start with a few opening remarks. I'd like to start with Akanksha. So this is probably a very unique situation that the sports world has faced, a pandemic like this. So in your career, have you ever faced such a situation, and how have you been able to overcome it?
Manu, this scenario is absolutely different. I don't think any of us has ever, witnessed this. These are unprecedented times. Something similar to that, personally, I've experienced when I was injured. I was out of the game for 9 months, till the time I got back to the court completely. Those are the times it felt exactly the same. You're staying at home, not doing anything, and after a while, in 2 months, 3 months, you get the physiotherapy going on and all that. Then you feel the part, like you're part of the world again. But something similar on the personal basis, I felt that. But like this pandemic is put everybody indoors. Like it's completely changed everybody's life. So it's absolutely different. But in somewhat personally was same for me when I was injured.
Understood. Dr. Nikhil, in your long career with the sports science field, have you ever faced a situation where athletes have been laid off for so long, and how has it affected the way you work?
So, like Akanksha mentioned, the only time athletes have been away from sport for this long has been after a serious injury. So, if you've had to undergo a surgery or something, you're out of the game for a few months, up to 6 months, and it can be extremely frustrating. However, even when you're injured and you're coming back and you're doing your rehab and return to sport, there's always a direction for you. So you know that you need to hit this goal in the first month, hit that goal in the second month, so that in 6 months' time, you can be back to playing at full capacity. Mm-hmm. At the moment, I think anxiety is one of the biggest issues that athletes I've worked with and I'm working with are facing. And that's because of not knowing what's next. Because all the tournaments have been postponed. There are no trials on the horizon. I don't think anything's been announced prior to September. The Olympics have been pushed ahead. So it's a difficult time for athletes. They don't know whether they need to train. If they need to train, how do they need to train? What level of fitness should they be at? So the mental aspects of it is quite a big problem at the moment. In terms of my practice, uh, I've been just doing video calls with athletes to talk to them, help them with their rehab and such. At the same time, just making sure that they don't lose their motivation, because that's another thing that suffers. Motivation goes for a toss and the anxiety takes over. So those are the issues that I've been facing.
Understood. Well, Rakesh is also an athlete and has probably faced similar situations or roadblocks. So, in your shooting stint, how were you able to overcome something similar to this?
We've come across similar situations where we kind of had to be off the shooting range for a short bit. Typically, it would happen during the election time when we wouldn't be able to use the shooting ranges because shooting ranges would be closed during that. And so we would have to make the alternative arrangements. So typically, people set up shooting ranges at home. So they find the 10-meter space, and makeshift shooting ranges are quite commonly heard. So, including the Abhinav Bindras and latest shooters like Apurvi and many other shooters have set up their own shooting ranges at home. So, typically, when they are not in that competitive environment at a shooting range, they're training back home. However, a 50-meter, which is not possible to replicate, so that is still compensated by training on wall holding or dry firing and shadow practice, which is called. So typically we are used to this kind of environment where we are not always accessing the facilities, but also keeping ourselves mentally and physically fit.
Understood. And coming to Shantanu, in your youth career with Pune FC, has there ever been a situation where there's a long layoff, and how you've been able to manage such a situation?
Yeah. So as a player, I haven't faced a situation where, players, as I have been, off the field for so long, despite some injuries, however, they have been minor. Since this is quite an unknown and a very, ever-changing situation, especially with the lockdown regulations also. Typically, how players going forward, they can, work on it is if they are able to, firstly know what is in their control and not, because that's how I had dealt with my injuries. So that would mean being aware of what are a few things in my control, in my everyday hands as such. So that would mean aspects like, say, my diet, any exercises have been given to me, for instance, and knowing what is beyond my hands.
Understood. So Shantanu, as a sports psychologist, you are someone who works with athletes from various disciplines like badminton, swimming, football, athletics, and so on. So in your opinion, how important is sports psychology at a time like this, and how will it help their training?
Yeah. So, presuming most players may not have been in a situation like this, considering the pandemic, there is, understandably a lot of anxiety and a lot of uncertainty revolving around the current situation, as Dr. Nikhil also mentioned, because it's mainly that, in terms of the training or the competitions, we are not yet certain about, when they will go live again in terms of, the trials or, what they have been preparing for before. So sports psychology would come into the picture whereby athletes can firstly become aware of what their thoughts are, what their feelings are, and how is it that they are reacting to this situation emotionally. Because eventually when they get back onto the range, the ground or the water, it's eventually the thoughts and the feelings which will either be helpful for their performance or be harmful for their performance as well as their mental health. So sports psychology, I would say, is not just important during this period, but more so in the whole routine of an athlete, in the journey of an athlete, whereby, they again stay focused on essentially the things which are in their control again. So, what sports psychology can essentially lead to is where athletes take charge of their mental health and their mental training. So they are prepared to face different situations going forward, be they in competitions or be they in personal lives as well.
Understood. Well, with the mental aspect of it captured, Akanksha, for a sport like basketball, training becomes tough when you don't have your setup of hoops and your own court in your backyard. So what would you recommend athletes focus on at a time like this in their respective sports?
Personally, I feel that athletes, when we don't know, we are not sure when this whole crisis is going to get over. So treat this as an off season and train accordingly. Work on your strength and conditioning. Work on the things which you've not been able to pay attention to. Work on your ball handling drills. Skill wise, there are certain things you can do personally, like ball handling, passing. You can have a wall and you can start passing practices and stuff. So these are the things I think you can follow. Strength and conditioning, why it's important? Because over or the things are in the normal path. I think this will help athletes to get back to their camps or their practice regime at the same level where they had left. So personal training is very important. I'm sure that all the coaches and the strength and conditioning trainers, they have their macros planned, like macro practice plans planned. So what they have to do is they have to share those plans with the athletes and guide them what all things they have to do during these off season. And so this is what we have been doing in our academy. For the senior athletes, we've been sending them practice plans on the daily basis, and to get the feedback if they've done it properly and all that, we ask them back. They have to send us back the videos. That way, we are able to see what they have done throughout the day, and we can assess them. This is something which people can follow. Kids, I feel like you don't. Ball handling, passing, there are certain things, ball releases, follow through, all these things you can't really work on them now. So these are the things can be followed. On that aspect, Zoom has been very helpful to us. We've been doing online classes, and for the elite athletes and for the grassroots level athletes, there are two different classes happening right now. So especially for the grassroots level athletes, you have to be able to see them when they're doing some exercise. If you give them some exercise and they're doing it by themselves, you don't know if they're doing it correctly, their postures are correct or the skills is correct. So we see them online and we correct them as it is, if the skill is going on or the drill is going on. So this has helped us. So online is something which can be really coaches can really keep that in mind. I think this is the time when they can use the technology right now to train the kids. As far as hoops is concerned, there are certain things. Basketball cannot be played without the hoops. So we do a drill where the small kids are sitting on the chair and taking the ball in hand, and they're releasing the ball. So they have to take care of the flick, follow through they have to maintain the triangle. So all these things, if they keep doing that, so it will help them once they are back on the court. The releases will be correct. Same like you're standing on the spot, release the ball, step one step back, and the ball falls on the same thing. That means you're doing it right. So these are the things kids do it on on their own, they can do it personally. Ball handling drills there are tons of ball handling things online, and the things which we've been doing in the academy, they can follow that, and they've been doing it. And to make sure that they're doing it perfectly, what we have started is we have started a lot of competitions in the kids. So by the end of the week, when we are done with the 5 days training, we tell them to give them a 30 seconds drill where lots of skills are involved, and they have to record it, perfect it, and then they have to send this video or a video to us. And among all the kids, we decide who has done this the best. And this keeps the kids motivated. Okay, this I have to get it right, and so that I can win the competition. So these are the things has motivated the kids in this the competition and all that we have prepared for them. So we can't do much, but definitely our creativity as a coaches can definitely motivate the kids to keep on working on their skills and the personal training. So these are the things I think are the advices for the coaches who are watching this video.
So technology is definitely a big hand in making sure this happens. Yeah. I see Rakesh is standing inside a shooting range, and as a unique sport, shooting has been going on with their coaching and tournaments even virtually. So in a situation like this, have athletes been confronted with any roadblocks, and are they able to train without any problems, Rakesh?
So they will be able to compete amongst each other. So it's virtually when we're competing, otherwise also when things are normal, so the competition is within yourself. So now when we have isolation training, everyone is in their own places. So again, you're virtually competing with anybody, but you're again competing with your own self. So in that way, you don't have much distraction. So you just keep your focus on yourself. So hoping that all the coaches are keeping focus on their athletes and giving them the technical goals to really improve upon for the long term goal settings which they've typically done. It would be important to focus on these long term goals. So athletes will be able to keep up with these times for us, but the only uncertainty is, yes, so what's 6 months down the line, which is the next competition? Those are the very uncertain things, I think, which really the support system has to really keep up with the athletes' minds, so the motivation is not lost.
That's true. Well, shooting seems to be training, but a lot of the athletes are coming in after what might be a very long layoff. So, Dr. Nikhil, in terms of training load, how do you recommend athletes start their training? And what should they maybe keep in mind to ensure they do not face injuries when they get into it?
So the first thing to avoid injuries and to slowly take the athlete back up to their peak fitness, you need to know at what level are you starting. For that, as soon as training begins or the lockdown opens up, or at least they give permission for residential academies to start up, I think the first thing that needs to be done is assessments. Assessments in terms of, say, for badminton, you could do a beep test for endurance, jump test, just to see where the athlete is. Because 2 months is a long time, and no matter how hard you train at home, your fitness levels are going to drop, but drop to what extent we don't know, which is why you need to test. And once you because if you leave it to the athletes and ask them how fit they feel, they will always say they are here, but actually they are there. So you need to do the testing, understand where they are, and then chart a course to take them from this level to this level. And the timeline I would suggest is at least 2 months. Now, athletes who are injured going into the lockdown, I'm sure during the lockdown period, they would have healed completely. They must have stayed in touch with their caregivers, their physios, their doctors, their coaches to undergo proper rehabilitation. But still, if you were injured going into the lockdown, your fitness level is going to be slightly lower than someone who wasn't injured, and it would take 2 weeks more. So, by and large, you have to give yourself 2 months after you begin training to reach peak fitness. If you try and speed it up, then you're likely to get injured. But if you follow a proper plan made by your coach, I think you should be okay.
So 2 months is the time frame that Dr. Nikhil says is what athletes should take in order to hit the ground running. While that is physical, mentally, athletes have to focus on something else. So Shantanu, could you throw some light on what athletes should do, or rather what they should focus on mentally, say 1 month or 1 week before they return to training? Shantanu, I think your audio.
Yes. So, before they jump into training, after the lockdown, from the mental perspective, what will help them is, if athletes are able to, firstly understand and practice techniques such as visualization, whereby they are able to imagine their motions, their movements, in training, while they are at home, so that, when they get back onto the court or in the water, they are in a better position to be in tune with, what they were doing before the lockdown. So that would essentially mean is that their confidence is relatively still high up, and they are also motivated to come back and train harder. So that would be one thing where again sports psychology can lead athletes to firstly make it a habit of how to visualize and how to integrate that into their routine. So apart from doing their fitness drills, skill work, all of those aspects. Another another element I feel would be important during the lockdown is if all of us as support systems are able to promote, especially for athletes below 12 or 13, the idea of developing multiple interests. So what that means is, apart from their identity as an athlete, as a sports person, it makes, it would make a lot of sense if they are also able to know that they are beyond athletes. So essentially, developing other interests, so that if they have to face a situation like this again, due to an injury or any other reason which is not in their control going forward, mentally they are in a better position, because they know that, yes, as an athlete I am focused on doing all the things at home, which have been suggested to me. But beyond that, I have another interest, like, say, reading books, for instance, or learning a language. So emotionally speaking, there would be a balance about sport, and also about developing and inculcating new hobbies and interests. So that, coupled with the visualization and planning, like Dr. Nikhil was also mentioning, prioritizing mental health and mental training would certainly go a long way. Because eventually, the more better we know our mind and our feelings, the better they are going to cooperate and help us in training and in competition going forward.
Understood. So holistic development is something athletes should definitely focus on.
Yes.
Now, once all this lockdown is over, a lot of athletes are going to start coming in and playing sport. So, say for example, in a sport like basketball, where there is a lot of contact involved, Akanksha, what sort of measures should, say, an academy take for contact-based sports, so that parents are sure that, okay, the kids are returning to training in a safe environment?
Yeah. So it's going to be really difficult once the lockdown is lifted, because basketball, yes, it is a team game, and it is, on top of that, it is a contact sport. So it's going to be difficult for us to keep the players away from each other. So all the people involved in the training, like, from coaches to athletes to to support staff, everybody has to come up with a plan for different age groups and for lots of things. So the one thing which we were discussing as an academy, like, we definitely have to start planning, instead of doing one skill for the whole group. And earlier it used to be a big group doing the same skill. Transition is happening very smoothly with one drill to another, like that. So, but right now, what we have to focus is, the group needs to be smaller than before, of course, because we don't want a lot of kids playing together. We don't know who's infected, who's has the, if there is some problem with some kid has a virus or whatever is infected, then it can spread to the whole academy. So we have to make sure that the group sizes are smaller, for sure. It can be according to age group, and within the age group also there can be a lot of groups. So this is something which is very important. Of course, the fundamental of basketball cannot be changed. It has to be played with 10 players at one point of time. It has to be played with one. But at the same time, certain things I think we can follow is making smaller groups. The second thing is sanitization is something which is very important. As a Center for Sports Excellence, CSE and Academy together can work on sanitization, where before and after the equipments are sanitized really well, the ground is sanitized really well. Coaches are taking care of their personal health and sanitization. Once the athletes are back on the court, like, before even they enter the court, they have to go to the locker room, change everything from head to toe. All the gears has to be changed. They have to carry everything in the bag, change it, come back to the court, play. Before playing, you have to sanitize yourself. After playing, sanitize yourself, get back and change your clothes, and go back. These are the things we can follow. For senior athletes, who are the professionals, I feel that they really have to focus on the rules or what we have been following during the lockdowns. Like, say, during the lockdown, nobody was coming to each other's house. Like, we've not been going anywhere. So they have to follow that. Like, don't invite anybody home, don't go out, keep yourself protected, safe, so that when you're back on the court with other professional athletes, you have to really pay attention. Like, they are also protected, they are also safe. So we have to take responsibility of ourselves. These are things we can follow. The places like CSE, or like, because hostels coming up, and the other places where hostels or the the residences there, they are still a safer options. Once we know that kids are they're fit, they're healthy, and they start training. It can be again a closed group where they're training, they're going back, and they're completely healthy. So it's not affecting anybody, and especially the athletes playing together. These are the things we can follow. Basketball, again, as I said, the fundamentals you can't change. There will be this is going to be a contact sport. For some time we can avoid, team trainings where we used to do one skill for big group. We can divide a lot of groups, like say 5-6 groups, and we make sure that they are the different part of the court, or different courts they're practicing in. And say one group is doing strengthening, one group is doing fitness, one group is doing ball handling, one group is doing shooting. So we can always rotate them, but at the same time we have to make sure they are handling their own equipments. They're not sharing the equipments again. Kids can carry their own balls, or we can assign a ball to a kid, and they are responsible to once they start, they finish with that ball only, like that. So these are the things we can follow as an academy, and I definitely feel that all the advisory regarding the safety and health should come from government medical officials, which we will be able to follow and which will help us. But at the same time, as an academy, these are the things I think we can follow, and we can keep our athletes safe.
I think it's safe to say that one of the additional equipments that most sports people will add to, apart from their jerseys and shoes, is probably a sanitizer. And of course, sanitizing the equipment and social distancing is something that sports will have to inculcate even after return. Now, coming to a sport like shooting, where social distancing is already inherent in the sport, we understand that because of this situation, a lot of the athletes have had to rework their goals. So, Rakesh, if you could throw some light on this whole process of resetting goals and how it helps.
Yes, so like the Olympics itself is postponed for 2021. So there have been these long-term goals now suddenly have shifted. So your plan A is kind of jeopardized, then you have to go into the plan B. So you always look forward for these plan Bs, because I think Shantanu will agree with this, that most of the time plan A, which we set these long-term goals, there's always room for the plan B to kind of step up. So that way, yes. So we've changed all our plan A goals to plan B. So the plan B had been recently with our academy also. We've made these vision statements where all of these athletes are, just last week, we reset all these goals to the next 6 months. What are we looking at? And then next 1 year, what are we looking at? Because a lot of emphasis will be there right now on personal training, especially on the fitness aspects. And there's a lot of scope for improving theory, understanding a lot of nitty-gritties of nutrition, nitty-gritties of the sport, and personal fitness. So a lot of these focuses are there. So then these goals, which are kind of reset now, it gives a lot of motivation for continuous training. Possibly as we entered the lockdown, within the first week, I think everybody must have been slightly worried. What's next? What do we look at? Some of the athletes I was speaking to, they were not really motivated to touch their rifle or pick up any other activity apart from just resting. So that resetting of goals can really help them in keeping up with long-term goals, and then really make progress along way.
Understood. So, well, goal setting is necessary, and athletes have to definitely look at maybe the next 6 or 7 months. Dr. Nikhil, you're someone who's constantly in touch with various organizations and various bodies. So in your opinion, when is it really safe for sport to commence?
So the virus isn't going away anywhere. It's here to stay. We don't have a vaccine yet. We don't have a proven medicine yet. And at some point, we have to start opening up. I mean, you can't stay indoors all the time. This fear of, if you step out, that some evil thing is going to grab you. We need to step out at some point. So I think residential academies can start off almost as soon as the lockdown period ends. That's because or not just residential academies, even our national camps for people who have already qualified for the Olympics or high performance camps, like Rakesh would know about national camps where everyone's sequestered into one place and you don't know the world outside exists. So in cases like that where you have a select group of athletes, their coaches, their support staff, and everyone else, from the cooks to the cleaners, everyone's in one location and they're not moving out. Those places can be started pretty quickly, because then you have a lot of control over uh, contacts and making sure that people are following the necessary sanitization techniques. Like Akanksha said, not just personal sanitation, but also for the equipment. So once you're able to have that much of control in the residential academy or in the national camp, I think after the 17th, you should look at starting up. But other places where you have sort of an area in a club which you're renting out, and an academy is running where you have people from all walks of life coming in, and they're not only there, they're going to few more places, plus you have summer camps, you have young kids coming in. So at such cases, sort of controlling the amount of contact and all becomes a little difficult. So then you can try and adopt some of the practices that Akanksha said, that, have smaller groups, have more control over that, make sure that people don't get too close to each other. You can divide the court space into different areas and have people do different things. So all of that can be done. But at some point, you need to bite the bullet and slowly start opening up. Opening up residential academies and national camps would be step one. And then you can start filtering down. The government has done a thing where they have divided the country into red, green, and orange zones. And green zones are supposed to be corona-free. So if that's the case, then at least 50% of the sports can be started. When I say 50%, I don't mean 50% of sports, but number of people that you can accommodate at one time. That can be reduced, capacity. And you can, at reduced capacity, you should look to start and space it out. So at least in the green zones, I think some sports can definitely begin. Non-contact sports for sure. Even in contact sports with adequate care, you can start.
So that definitely seems like good news for most of the people listening. So on just
that's
a concluding
my opinion.
Note,
I'm not the government, so
definitely. So I just want to sort of get a concluding view from each one of you. Just one takeaway that you have for all our viewers, starting with you, Dr. Nikhil. One takeaway for all the athletes or academy people listening to us.
So my suggestion is that right now, while the lockdown is still in process, use tools like Zoom, use sessions to keep your athletes motivated. Like Rakesh said, you need resetting of goals. Once the lockdown opens, you need to at least do some kind of basic testing to know how far the athletes' fitness levels have come down for whatever sport you're involved in. And you need to follow proper sanitation measures. The main thing is don't be afraid, okay? Because if whatever the global trends have shown us, even though we don't have a vaccine and a medicine, the human body can fight off this virus. And most people who get infected show no symptoms. That doesn't mean you shouldn't care about what's happening and just start roaming around, but don't be afraid. That's one of the most important things. Follow whatever is asked of you. Follow the government directives. Be careful for at least 6 to 8 months, if not a year after the lockdown opens, where you still need to be disciplined. But fear is something you need to avoid.
Fear is something you need to avoid. Excellent. And Akanksha, if you could have a last sort of closing statement from you.
So for all the athletes playing professionally or the young ones, I have just one suggestion: use this time, lockdown time, and like an off season, completely focus on your strength and conditioning. Keep yourself fit. That once the lockdown is lifted and things are normal, and you're back in the camps and in the training regime, you should be able to fit in very well. So the coaches don't have to start from the very zero, so you keep yourself fit. It will help the coaches, it will help your game, and you'll be able to get back in action very soon. So this is my sort of suggestion to all athletes.
Thank you so much. And one takeaway from your point of view, Rakesh?
So I would say that I think each of the athletes in different sports have to pick up what are their shadow practice kind of things which they typically do and innovate themselves, keep themselves really fit for the game, and not let go of these practices, because these are fundamentals of any sport which they would be doing right now back home, which is self improvement. So it's definitely something they should continue as a practice once things open up also.
Thank you for that. And Shantanu, one takeaway for all our viewers.
So it would certainly be that players can brainstorm over which at least three mental skills they would certainly need after the lockdown, and they would benefit from applying. So what that would mean is firstly becoming aware of what those skills are, and also followed by that rating themselves on their current abilities. So for instance, if I had to rate my focus say while playing a football match, I can say that it's a 7 on 10, and I would like to reach to a 8.5. So the next step would be to understand how can I take my 7 to an 8.5. So what would I need to do? And my answer could be quite personal to me, and that would be, say, as a defender, becoming more focused and more alert while, say, one-on-one situation. So if we are able to be proactive and not wait to become mentally aware and mentally stronger when we get back onto the pitch, this would certainly help athletes. So this is from the mental training bit. And from the pandemic perspective, I believe all of us can become more aware and mindful of what information and what knowledge we are consuming regarding the regulations, regarding the global trends which are there. So just ensuring that they are verified, they are credible sources from which we are hearing, we are listening, we are reading any knowledge or any updates as such.
Understood. So on that note, I'd want to thank all our panelists for joining us. I'm sure you gave quite a lot of positive information for all our viewers. And I'd like to thank also Olympic Gold Quest and International Institute of Sports Management for helping us with this session. And I'd like to wish all our viewers stay safe, and we'll see you on the field soon. Good night.